Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So once again, we're going to do a prepping poll today. This one goes as follows. 2 weeks into a likely year-long SHTF scenario, your neighborhood's resident headbanging drug user comes on your property asking for food for him and his two buddies. Seems legit. They have been eyeballing the females of your household for the past few days, and the females of your other non-threatening and mostly docile neighbors. What I mean by that is they're not really going to put up much of a fight. You know he has a criminal record for petty crime, but you also know that he's not too bright. He does know you have supplies, including alcohol. Do you do the following? Give him some food and tell him it's all you have to give. Offer him food and alcohol in exchange for labor and security. Give him poison food, which has an 80% chance of working. Rack the slide and tell him to get the hell off your property, or other. Please explain in a comment. So let's see what sort of insights you guys provided on this hypothetical grid down scenario. Let's get to it. Alright, so before we get into the video, just a quick message from our sponsors. This is Survival Tactical Bow, and these are the SAS Recon bows. Main difference, this one's a little bit shorter, takes a little bit longer to set up. This one's ready to go out of the box. I've done extensive reviews on both of these bows before. Far and away the most acclaimed survival bows on the market, which is why I'm carrying them now at CanadianPreparedness.com. Only the best stuff, which has been tested by some of the most reputable gear reviewers, including myself, on YouTube. So go check that out. And one more thing that we are carrying, one of the most 5-star award-winning products is the Titan Survivorcord. Basically, it's paracord that has a variety of different unique features. The 620-pound test mil spec. In addition to the 7 usual strands of paracord, you have 25-pound test fishing line, a 30-gauge AWG wire for snaring, and of course you have some wax jute twine fire tinder, which works amazingly well. This stuff is just incredible. Now, in making this poll, I tried to provide as much detail as possible in the question that would hopefully inform whichever sort of decision you made. Because there's a few things in there that I mentioned in the question that I don't know if a lot of people picked up on, and they may not have factored that into their response. So you really needed to pay attention to the question. The fact that the neighbors were mostly docile. The fact that he had two buddies. The fact that those two buddies perhaps didn't come up with him to the house at that time, so he had the sense to just come on his own. And also the fact that he's been eyeballing not only yours, but other females on the street. In addition to that, I also commented that he isn't too bright. Now, I know that's subjective, but I think you get what I mean when I say that. And you also know as a drug user, he's probably a lot more prone to alcoholism as well, and possibly would do things in exchange for alcohol. So I carefully crafted the responses in such a way that they provide an option for anyone, no matter how aggressive or passive your strategy. So the first option was the most passive of all, and that's basically to give them the food and tell them that it's all you have to give. And 4% of people picked that response. But I'm guessing that probably a lot more people are going to do that than they think. I know a lot of people think they're just going to start, pull the guns out and start blazing right away. But you got to remember, this might be a guy who, you've said hello to down the street a few times. So with this response, only 4% of people gave this response. And I can't say I'm that surprised by it. I think a lot of people in the moment are going to think that they never do that. But, when there's a little bit of pressure on you and perhaps, you're feeling sorry for the guy in the moment, I think that there's going to be more than 4% of people who actually do that. Now, could you offer him food and alcohol in exchange for labor and security? 7% thought that. That was surprising to me because I figured, with my subscriber base, that you were a bit more opportunistic to try to capitalize on an opportunity like that. See, if I was to pose this question to someone like a Negan of The Walking Dead, number 2 would be what he instantly gravitated towards. How can I make this guy work for me? Because remember, you are intellectually superior, at least in this example. So you can use that to your advantage. I know a lot of people are thinking, well, security, well, I don't want this guy watching over me. And that doesn't mean that, you know, you have to put your full confidence in them. But, you know, there may be ways where you could actually get these guys to go out and do some work for you. And essentially, you would be the leader in that situation. That's really what a gang leader is. But now, in some way, you would have to assert your dominance. And that might require something more than just the supply of provisions to that person. Now, you could give them poison food, which has an 80% chance of working. So 15% of people who took this poll, after 2 weeks of a guy coming to the house and asking for food, would potentially poison this guy and kill him. I thought that was fairly high, to be honest. I didn't think it was going to be that high. 15% of people would actually take a lethal approach at a first-time encounter like that. Now, you don't have to justify it to me, because I know all the nuances of grade down and why things are going to be so desperate, and that they're quickly going to likely pass this point in terms of the levels of desperation and what people are willing to do. But that seems surprisingly high. You know, to be willing to actually take somebody's life because they came up and asked you for food instantly, not knowing what they're going to do in the future. For sure, yes, there's a good chance that if you deny them the stuff, they're going to come back, or they're going to try to steal it, or they're going to do something, or they're going to cause problems for other people. But you don't know that with 100% certainty. So just the fact that 15% of people would go that far off the start. Now, either people are just saying that and they wouldn't really do that, and they're just, you know, talking tough. It's hard to say. Now, number 4 is not the most aggressive, because of course taking lethal action is the most aggressive, but it's fairly aggressive. It sends a clear message that you are not willing to give up your food. And of course, in racking the slide and telling them to get off your property and not wanting to cooperate, you're basically signaling to them that you do have stuff, but you don't want them to have it. You're giving something away in doing that. Whereas if you were to, you know, hopefully some people are going to explain this in the other section here, which is 20%, thank God. 53% of people are just going to rack the slide and hope this guy doesn't come back at night with his buddies to do some kind of home invasion on you. So you give away a lot of information that you maybe don't have to. You could theoretically say, well, I have a little bit of food, I can give you a little bit if you do some labor for me. I guess the thing is, if you're willing to engage in a war with these guys, which you are, essentially when you rack the slide, you may as well try to get something out of them, because you're assuming that you racking the slide is going to make them never want to come back. And by racking the slide, I just mean brandishing a firearm, sending a clear message that if they come back, you will take lethal force, or potentially less than lethal force, but most likely lethal force. So you very well could show some will to use lethal force if you had to, but also be willing to negotiate a bit. But let's see what you guys had to say in the comment section here. So 377 comments. I'm really excited about reading some of these comments. Let's see what the first comment is. Oh yeah, this one. I read this one. Silky saw. Not sure how it's going to play out yet, but if there's one thing I've learned from this channel, it's always that a silky saw is always the right answer. And you know, you're probably right. You could give him a saw and you could say, go cut me such and such amount of wood with that saw somewhere. Go get me some wood and I will provide you with some provisions. There you go. Or you could just go all samurai on his ass and cut him down to size, so to speak. So this guy's been working in a prison in Alberta, a corrections officer for 2 years now, dealing with people of varying levels of this example and much worse every day. I talk to them to see why they do what they do, and most of them, they don't think more than 10 minutes ahead. If you rack the slide, all you're doing is letting them know you have guns, which will mean they will come back later with more guys. Yes, but if they don't think more than 10 minutes ahead, that means they're not really too bright. So it wouldn't be hard to play chess with these folks. Another little finer point that I mentioned in the question was that this guy was accused of petty crime. So for all you know, it could be drug-related theft, jaywalking. We don't really know what it is. We know that it's not assaults or murder or sexual assault or anything of that nature. Yes, he was eyeballing the neighborhood females, Realistically, in that kind of situation, a lot of people are going to be doing that, not just people with past criminal records. Probably more like drug-related charges, maybe theft under $5,000 type thing. What I'm trying to say is that not just because a person has a drug problem doesn't mean they're necessarily a bad person. And I can attest to this because I work with people with drug addiction problems every day. And I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of these people are just people who are struggling with mental health issues. They're not necessarily bad people. So I'm not trying to vilify people who are struggling with substance addictions in this example. Now, there is different severities of different drugs. A full-blown crystal meth user is probably going to be a much greater threat than somebody who just smokes marijuana. But a person in marijuana withdrawal is going to be very temperamental, and they're going to act out probably in a similar way as somebody who is on crystal meth. Now, you can debate that, but I've seen it firsthand. So this guy is seeing people who are in jail, and indeed there's that subset of the population of drug users who do end up in jail for various reasons, and they probably have a greater propensity to commit more heinous crimes. Poisoning is probably the best option because actually shooting someone is something very few can do, and by the time you make that decision to shoot, it will be too late. There is no reasoning with an addict in withdrawal. Well, that's debatable too. With little rule of law, the constraints will be off, and they likely will set your house on fire and pick through the wreckage and come back. With a starving kid, they just kidnap for the purpose to get your stuff. Think of it this way. This is probably the first time you have dealt with people like this, so that you think they think like you. However, they have lived their whole lives preying on people like us and know every weakness we have based on our law-abiding, moderately moral upbringing. They already have a plan, very, very outspoken question you have spinning in your head. Ideally, give them poisoned food if you have the forethought to have it ready, then following them back to their base, finish them off while they are weak. Give them anything that sets them on the way to be happy and complacent. The number one problem with this, and another person commented here, is that you would have to explain yourself to the authorities should the grid come back up. And of course, you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life. A lot of people think they're just going to be able to put people down and to be able to live with the consequences. Maybe if that person did something to you distinctly that justified that sort of retaliation, but if you're just basing it on, well, they may come back and do something, I think that your conscience would eventually catch up to you in that regard. Other explained in the comments, Slide is already racked. The All-American Prepper is strong in this feed. I greet him with his buddies with a 9mm to his skull. Problem solved. 49 likes. So 49 people agree with this guy about putting one in the guy's dome right after he asks you for stuff. Right there, point blank, middle of the street, in front of all your docile neighbors to see. I call BS on that one. I don't really think that lots of people are going to have the balls to do that. Not just the balls, but just the disregard for human life to do that. Rack the slide, then if they show again, don't hesitate. Pig food or compost, because if he leaves the property after other options, no telling who he's going to tell. You have food, ammo, water, alcohol. And that is a good point. So if you do nothing and you just give him stuff, then of course you run the risk of him coming back. But if you can somehow try to exploit this individual for his labor, then you could potentially keep him out of that line of thinking. I think he's only gonna go to that level of thinking, and of course he's going to take the path of least resistance like everything else. So he's only going to go there if he feels he has no other choice. But if you're giving him a fair deal, meaning you go and do a little bit of work for me and I'll give you some stuff, then his thinking isn't necessarily going to drift into that darker area of things. Other, eliminate. They are so unpredictable and very dangerous. Best to be done with and move on. As harsh as it may sound, better safe than sorry. So many people made comments of a lethal nature. Put him and his so-called friends out of their misery with a double tap, which will also keep the neighborhood safer and show others you mean business. Yeah, it sure would. But would you be able to live with yourself? That's the thing. I can see that at some point this guy and his buddies will most likely be trouble. Not to be heartless or to be the Good Samaritan, but he and his will at first be told politely to go on their way. When that doesn't work, I will do what can be done to remedy the potential situation before it happens, unfortunately in a mostly likely permanent manner. Also, keep in mind you will not want to leave someone able to come back to haunt you later. No, I won't end someone for simply being hungry, but knowing this type of person group's demeanor means they generally will create chaos and strife within a civil group. Why drive them off to possibly find a stronger group of marauders to lead back to your group? Moral line crossed or not, I will not suffer my children to be at the hands of that type. You know, you make some really good points there, and it's hard to disagree with all of that. There's really two ways to look at it. You can have faith in this individual's humanity, or you could suspect the worst. I'm not trying to be rude. Some of you people are dumb. As a woman, trust your freaking instinct and establish dominance early on. You're going to regret being nice to certain people. As a Christian, I know we're supposed to help people, but unless I feel like God led me to help someone, then I'm not doing it. Well, that's pretty subjective. That's incredibly subjective, actually. I don't think that's at all 100% in line with the turn the other cheek, unconditional golden rule thing that Jesus said. What do I know? Other, this is so stupid how everyone is saying they'll kill the guy. Yes, he's a drug user and does not deserve to live. That does not mean give you the right to kill someone. Maybe if this was a lifetime SHTF scenario, but the post says it's looking to last a year long. After that, you have to explain to the police why you killed someone when he was just asking for food. Not only that, you got two of his buddies about to come over searching for their friend. What then? I'd offer food in exchange for supplies he has. Seeing as he's not too bright, he'd either try to steal, in which case I would be well within my right to shoot, or he'd trade, which makes it an even deal for me. I can learn about his defenses and capabilities in the meantime, just in case. To me, this was probably one of the best responses so far, one of the most well thought out responses, which did take into consideration all of those nuanced points that I added to the poll question. Other, I might try to work out a deal, like if you can get coal or wood or something. That's what I was saying, that's why you need the Silky saws. I can get food, something like that, try to make a compromise. But it depends on how addictive they are, and if they are somewhat trustworthy, of course. Hopefully I've spoken with them before since we are neighbors, so maybe I know some useful information about them, because why not try to use them instead of just trying to brush them off? Give them poison food. I hate to be this guy, but I have a reason. I have known drug users, and the longer they go without a high, the more they are willing to risk for it. In some cases, once you get past the acute withdrawal phase, technically the physical dependency is gone, so the sickness which drives people to do maddening things, is the physical aspect of that is gone, but indeed there's going to be a psychological addiction that persists long afterwards, especially if you quit not because you wanted to, but because you were forced to, because shit hit the fan. Other, I'd take all three out, no use to anyone, okay. Offer him food and alcohol in exchange for security. I'm a farmer family. I will always have food and could use the help. Plus, I'm that situation. I'm always packing and I'm a good shot. I won't miss and I'll make that apparent. Plus, I'm a hunter. I know how to observe and cover. I won't let them close to my family. Our house will be locked and guarded. Plus, I have a very, very, very protective German Shepherd that would love to meet and greet with anyone who would harm us. Me too. Cool stuff. Now, I know I'm slightly biased in my favoring certain comments, but I really do think that the whole idea that you're just going to open up on this guy right when he comes to the door, there's many things you're not thinking about. The retaliation factor, if they have family members, you're not thinking about your own conscience, and the legal ramifications if any law and order was reestablished once again. He is likely going to be a threat in the immediate future, so give him some poison. So instead of just killing him and his buddies outright, scaring other potential allies and wasting bullets, I'd rather be passive about it and just give him food that will eventually kill him, the way people might be scared to get food from my group, and it eliminates a potential problem. Interesting solution. Now this guy says, the guy is unarmed and not posing a direct threat at this point. Asking for food doesn't justify being killed. I agree. Firstly, he would be taken into custody long before reaching my actual property. Then after a lengthy interrogation, not torture, a patrol would be sent to verify his story and assess the threat. Finally, assuming everything adds up, he'd be dropped off outside the perimeter with what he came with and a warning not to return. If that doesn't add up, he becomes a hostage until the situation is resolved. Edit. So many comments about saying kill on sight, but what if his 2 buddies have 20 buddies each? Now, if they have a rallying call to attack you and take what you have, or one of his buddies may be valuable to your group even if he isn't. Also, giving him something will only make him come back for more later, so you have to be very strict and have tight security that isn't afraid to pull the trigger, but don't go looking for enemies either. This is a very level-headed response. Tip, when interrogating him, don't let him see anything and be careful what you disclose indirectly. Don't eat around him or show off more firepower than required. Give him something small to eat and then have someone else say, but that's all we have. Don't give it to him, for example. That's pretty clever, actually. That's really good. Yeah, so put on some sort of act. You know, I made a video about Gray Man in SHTF, and one of the things I suggested was to make sure that if everybody on the block's getting skinny, you're not staying the same size. So run a calorie deficit even if you have rations to make it look like you don't have much. If there is a FEMA truck that comes by, say, don't just hide out in the house like you don't need to be out there standing in line for that stuff. Go and act like you don't have stuff. The more people think you don't have stuff, the better, and sometime that is going to require a bit of an act. That's a genius comment. Thank you very much for that comment, JDL Mac. So I have signs on my property that say no trespassing, violators will be shot, so he would be shot. If anybody came around asking questions like the police, I would just tell them that they tried to rape my daughter. In a real SHTF, you gotta stop thinking you are at Disneyland and deal with the threats accordingly. I won't be coming by your house to drop off any Silky saws, I can guarantee that much. Keep on walking, nothing but an American prepper here. Welcome to Terminus. My dogs will eat well. Man, a bunch of ruthless people out there. Crazy. Double on buckshot to the face. Wow. This is crazy, man. I didn't think that people were this gung-ho about, you know, putting people down. Offer him food in exchange for his testicles, rendering him docile and uninterested in my females. Oh, man. I guess it's kind of a fair trade. Not really. Terrible trade. Eat lead. Slide would already be racked with round already seated. Okay, we get your point. Take them off like an old dog and put them down. When it comes down to it, it's then them or your family. That's what you're trying to write. Okay, so here's another outside the box explanation. This is what I was really looking for with that other comment section. Not just, I'm going to shoot the guy. I want to hear more elaborate strategies on how to deal with this. Tell them you don't have anything and your kids are starving along with yourself and your wife, and ask them if they can help. That should make them think that trying anything stupid wouldn't get them anything they're looking for, except maybe hurt or even killed. Make sure, wow, this is an incredible run-on sentence. Make sure they see your gun, but don't make it obvious and threatening. That's your best bet. This doesn't work. Kill them at the first sign. Okay, I can't keep reading this. Anyways, you get the point. What he's trying to say is appear weak when you are powerful. Good old Sun Tzu Art of War tactic. Easy. When SHTF occurs, I won't be on said property or home. Our plans don't include trying to defend our homes, so they're going to bug out. So it's kind of irrelevant. I hate to be the guy that says this, but I don't think just racking the slide is enough. You got to tell them to leave, only to come back. My voice is for a dirt nap. Never heard that before. A dirt nap. I, in fact, have 3 daughters, and I've pondered this scenario often. I would try to provoke them into a fatal clash. If they are cowards and truly not a threat, they will avoid conflict. If they are easily provoked, they are a threat, and they will only return. At that point, I pull my concealed weapon and kill them. Aside from ridding the immediate threat, this action will send a message to any would-be troublemakers. I do understand that the question pertains to a scenario in which Raw will end after a year or so, and that I might someday prosecuted for my action. That risk of punishment is an exceptional risk for the safety of my family. And I'm glad Bubba mentioned this, who always has good comments, even though I don't always agree with them. Because, yeah, at some point you may have to make that choice. Do I get proactive in my self-defense, even if it means stepping outside the parameters of the law right now in order to do so. And I'm sure most people would do that in those conditions. You'd have to do it because you'd have no other choice. If left with no other choice, you would have to do it. Bullet to the head, nip the problem in the bud. Wow, you guys are ruthless. Ruthless sons of bitches. I would have no choice to put that creature back to sleep. This creature will come back to bite you in the arse if you don't take care of it. People are so quick to dehumanize this guy. I mean, he's a drug user, and he's a headbanger, and he's got a little criminal record for petty crime, but for all you know, he could be some emo kid who listens to Tool and Sepultura or something like that. Doesn't mean that just because he's some headbanging metalhead that he's on par with Sons of Anarchy type thing, you know. Tell him to do what everyone else is doing and stand in line at a FEMA camp. Put a sign up that says trespassing. He'll be treated as normal. Righto, righto. None of the above. If the rule of law is reestablished, most people will be held accountable for their atrocities that they've done. Either it be by the local government being reestablished or by people in that area. With that being said, I will do whatever I have to do to protect my family. So a similar line of thinking as Bug Out Bubba there. Time for a couple more, then I gotta go. I'd like to point this one thing out. No matter what the choice is, he's going to eventually come back or return into your enemy if he's not already. This guy's history is stacked against him. No matter how much food I give him and friends, they'll run out and they'll come back. Because they're not too bright. That's something else to consider, is that this guy is not going to start growing food in his backyard. So all options of me giving him supplies are off the table. By brandishing my firearm, that has sealed the deal of him and his gang wanting blood. I'd shake their hands and get their names. I'd ask their leaders to come to the basement with me, and I'd let his throat meet my blade. I'd call for the second man to give us a hand. So a bit of fantasy going on here, that you would do all this stuff. Maybe you could pull it off, maybe not. Due to the fact of my plant knowledge, I'd actually give him something truly toxic, which would mean him and his buddies would no longer be a problem in 24 hours. Wow. Tamara Bell. One ruthless post-collapse female. Anyways, guys, my video cut off, so I'm going to leave it up to you to carry on the conversation in the comments section. What do you think of these responses, and what do you think of this scenario? If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.